The seismic shift of European political allegiance centred on France. There, the far-right National Front topped the poll with a quarter of the votes, the most stunning example of the anti-EU sentiment that became apparent across Europe as the election results came through. Our Europe editor Matt Fry is in Paris tonight. Matt.
Well, Jackie, let me first of all say that the picture across Europe was rather variegated. I mean, yes, they did very well in France, but in Italy, for instance, or in Finland or in Holland, the far right was very much put in its box and the established parties did rather well. Having said that, the kind of seismic center of this earthquake was very much in the city where I'm talking to now. Paris, last night, the National Front was celebrating here. And President Hollande went on air on prime time just a few minutes ago and said that he understood that this was a very painful result. He felt the pain of the French people. He knew where the result was coming from. But he also said very clearly that in his book, this was a rejection and a challenge of everything that France, French history and French politics stand for. The question is, what's he going to do about it? But I spent the day here in the city, and what I saw, to be honest, was interesting.
A drooping flag under leaden skies with the promise of more rain. That just about sums up the mood in Paris this morning. The tourists are still doing what tourists do, and the traffic on the Champs-Élysées is still terrible. But the political landscape here has changed, perhaps forever. It's all thanks to them, the Le Pen's father and daughter. Once they were shunned by the political establishment as a freak show on the fringes of national politics, now they're guzzling the bubbly with the giddiness of freshly made history. Champagne, what else? Their anti-Europe, anti-immigrant, anti-Paris elite message has struck a chord, and this morning Marine Le Pen read the establishment the Riot Act.
They cannot ignore the lessons of this ballot and this incredible rejection of the Socialist Party in power, but also of the entire so-called traditional political class.
At about the same time in Copenhagen, the Danish People's Party and their star candidate, the unforgettably named Morten Messerschmidt, were also celebrating some historic numbers on the back of an anti-immigrant, anti-EU message. If the swings weren't to the far right, they were to the far left. In Greece, the Syriza party rode to victory on an anti-austerity, anti-Berlin clarion call, best summed up as, "We don't want to become Germany's colony."
This is a historic day for our people. They have made a clear and brave verdict that despite the unprecedented propaganda of fear, they condemned the Samaras government and the policies of the bailout. And for the first time in history, it raised the left to first place, and with a significant difference.
But the swings were mostly to the right, and nowhere did they hurt more than in Paris, the spiritual home of the European Union, and here at the home of a president who enjoys approval ratings consistently below 20%.
Of course, the success of the National Front is also very much the failure of the man residing currently in that building behind me, the Élysée Palace. Now, François Hollande has not only failed to revive France's economic pulse after the Great Recession, he's also, almost uniquely, managed to upset two groups of people: the rich who feel overtaxed and the poor who continue to feel underemployed. And then, of course, there are the very many distractions of a different sort.
But it is the affairs of state that are now causing him anguish. This morning he summoned an emergency meeting of his cabinet. His Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, newly appointed to stop the hemorrhaging of support, called the result a political earthquake. France may be looking to the far right, but not here. On the Boulevard de la Chapelle, home to the North African community that makes Paris a multicultural metropolis. Here too, under the tracks, there are posters of Marine Le Pen, but they're not in great shape. Adnan is a pastry chef from Algeria who's lived here for 13 years. This is home, and last night's results worry him and his friends.
I'm really afraid.
Because your home is in France now, right?
Yeah, we live here and we work here and we grow up here. So it's like our country.
The French pride themselves on their ability to rise from the gutter and overturn the stale political order, from the pitchforks of the Peasants' Revolt to the noble principles of the first great European revolution, the one of 1789.
This was once called the Place de la Révolution, and for very good reason, because it was right on this very spot that Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette lost their heads, quite literally, a few years after the French Revolution. Now, no one is suggesting that François Hollande, who sits besieged and lonely in the Élysée Palace, will suffer a similar fate. However, the National Front had their eyes set on the next prize, that building over there.
The National Assembly. They only have 2 MPs there now, but there may be many more to come. Whether revolution or just insurrection, the people are angry and the noise has only just begun.
Well, to discuss some of these issues here on the rooftop in front of the Eiffel Tower, I'm now joined by Agnès Poirier. She's a writer and broadcaster who divides her time between Paris and London. Welcome to the programme. Now, we both watched François Hollande, the president, give his primetime address. He looked very animated. I guess his back is really up against the wall, isn't it?
Well, he sounded even martial. I don't know if you thought about it too. And, you know, almost on fire. I must say
almost on fire, which is rather unusual for him.
Yes, as much on fire as President Hollande can muster. But, you know, in a way, he couldn't ignore what happened yesterday evening, even though we expected it. You know, for it to happen was quite a shock for a lot of people. So, in a way, it's good. He comes on television, he addresses the nation. He says what we expected him to say, that is to say, I'm not going to resign, I'm not going to dissolve the parliament like, you know, Marine Le Pen asked yesterday, demanded even. But, you know, we could see him, we could see the animation, the passion, the fire, and he's just expecting for the economic recovery.
And when he says, as he did, that the true values of France, vested in égalité, liberté, fraternité, the values of the French Revolution, are his values, the values of mainstream France and not the values of the National Front, who of course say the exact opposite, who's right?
Well, Marine Le Pen has been extremely astute, and you know, in the last 3 years, since her election at the helm of the party, she's totally transformed the discourse and the image of the party. It used to be a party of lunatics, of eccentrics, of people who were nostalgic of the French Algeria. And suddenly she made it respectable, which of course is extremely dangerous. She sacked everybody who would say something racist, at least in public. And she appeared very together, and she also combined values from the left, Republican values of secularism, integration, the value of public services and the welfare state with conservative values of family and order. And in a way, she's had millions of French voters in a trance.
But I saw her give a speech the other day and she still comes up with this very robust anti-immigrant message. So what was the most important component here? Anti-immigration, anti-Brussels or anti-Parisian elite, or all 3 together?
All 3 together, but it's interesting. There were polls yesterday asking why, you know, the people who voted for her, what was the main reasons. Actually, Europe came quite, you know, at the bottom of the list. They said the main reason was I want a change, you know, which is so vague and so grandiose. And also they said they were protesting against traditional politics. So, you know, are they completely you know, I mean, it's very illusory. You know, can we change politics overnight? Or is it the lightning bolt that we need?
Okay, Agnès Poirier, thank you very much indeed. Well, as Agnès said there, it's going to be judged on results at the end of the day, and what really does need to happen here for any change in the political landscape to occur is for the economy to improve. And the French feel very isolated here because they look across the channel and they see Britain doing relatively well. They look across to the United States, they're also doing quite well. Germany, of course, is a political and economic powerhouse. In France, that is not the case. And until that changes, François Hollande and the established parties here will continue to have many problems. Back to you.